does the co-leader of the Green Party, Caroline Lucas. Welcome to both of you. Phillip Davies, if you think the committee's depressing, why are you joining it?
Well, the committee's there whether I like it or not, so if I can bring some common sense to the committee, that's surely a good thing, just in the same way that UKIP used to take their seats in the EU Parliament, not because they were fans of the EU Parliament or everything that it represented, but because they hoped to hold it to account. And
they didn't just want to hold. Well, they didn't just want to hold it to account. They wanted to actually end our involvement in the Parliament. Is that what you're going to do with this committee? Try and bring it down, break it up?
Well, I'd prefer it if it was just called the Equalities Committee. I don't see why it needs to be called the Women and Equalities Committee. You can still look at women's issues on a committee that's just called Equalities, but it seems to indicate that there are no issues for men, and clearly there are issues where men suffer. So I don't really see why it can't just be called the Equalities Committee.
Right. Well, what do you think about that, Caroline?
Well, I hope that the time that he spends on the committee will be an opportunity for him to understand a bit more about entrenched sexism in our society. So this is an MP who has been saying, as you said, that this committee shouldn't even exist, that it was disappointing that it was going ahead, and yet he's now hoping to take his position on it. And I just think that we need MPs on that committee who recognise, for example, the level of the gender pay gap, who recognise the disproportionate violence against women, who recognise that there's still a very long way to go in business, in politics, in just about every sphere of life, where women are discriminated against and where we need to have concerted effort to support women.
Right.
I'm certainly not against having actions to support men, and Philip does a good job doing that, but let him do that in his work there and let the Women's and Equalities Party carry on, rather than having him, a person who says that he's taking his lead from UKIP in the European Parliament. As we know, they're trying to bring down the presence of the European Parliament. That's not a very good precedent for the Women and Equalities Party.
Do you understand the issues of entrenched sexism, Phillip Davies, as Caroline Lucas has just outlined, the gender pay gap, violence against women? Do you understand those issues?
Yes, absolutely. There are massive issues that affect women. There is a gender pay gap. There's also a part-time gender pay gap where women are paid more than men. Yes, many women, 2/3 of victims of domestic violence are women, but 1/3 of victims are men. So what I'm saying is, of course there are issues that affect women and they should be tackled on the committee, but equally there are issues that affect men, and I don't see why they should be excluded from having their views on what is supposed to be an equalities committee. I believe in equality where gender should be irrelevant, and that's what I want to try and bring to the committee.
Right, and what's wrong with that, Caroline?
Well, when we have a society where women and men are equally represented in the different spheres of power in this country, then I think that's the time for the debate that Philip wants to have. If he wants to go ahead, as he does, and organise to raise issues around men's equality and issues around very serious issues about suicide rates for men and so forth, then by all means, please go and do that. We support that. But to have a presence on the committee who doesn't even believe the committee should exist, to have a presence who thinks that this is about feminist zealots, as he's put it, that to me doesn't suggest that this is going to be a very constructive contribution to the work of the committee.
I mean, you haven't started off well, one might say, in the terms of the language that you've used. Feminist zealots being just one of the terms that you've used to describe people like Caroline Lucas on the committee. But also, you made a comment at an event organised by a group called Justice for Men and Boys. They run a Lying Feminist of the Month award. According to their website, the awards highlight the fact that feminists are whiny, gormless, toxic liars. Were you right to give a speech at their conference?
Well, look, I appear on the BBC, but I'm hardly the greatest fan of the BBC. And so just because you appear on a platform somewhere doesn't mean to say that that therefore necessarily means you endorse everything about that organisation. So if that was the case, I would never appear on the BBC if you were setting that particular barrier. People should listen to what I actually said, rather than play the ball rather than the man. And what the point I made at that speech was that men and women are treated completely differently in the criminal justice system.
Right.
And I don't think that should be the case. It should be the case that men and women are treated equally when they go before the courts. And the only difference here between me and Caroline, it seems, is that I want this committee to be called the Equalities Committee, and it seems that she just wants it to be called the Women's Committee. I actually believe in genuine equality between the genders, between races, between sexes.
You've got a very, very
all
funny
of those
way
things.
of showing it, Philip, and I think what he should be doing right now, December the 14th, is to give us all a Christmas present by saying this was all a bit of a joke and he's not going to be on that committee, because everything he's just been saying does not convince me this is going to be a constructive presence on the committee. There's serious work to be done, work that's been doing around women and disabilities, for example, issues around the gender pay gap, which is still glaring when it comes to women in politics. These are issues that need concerted action now, and I'm not sure Philip's man to help us.
Is it a joke, your application, Philip?
No, not at all. And it's very. I would have thought Caroline would be the one person who would actually want to protect people with minority opinions in Parliament.
The day that you were a minority, Philip, I'll come a white Anglo-Saxon man. I don't think so.
It seems to me that Caroline wants people on the committee only if they agree with her. Well,
Right.
surely the whole point of a select committee is you have people on there with a range of opinions. Otherwise, what on earth is the point of an all-party select committee if people can only go on there if they all agree with Caroline?
It sounds like you are going to get on there because you're standing unopposed. But of course, Parliament, any member of Parliament, Caroline Lucas, can block the appointment or election to this committee. Will you try and block it?
I will talk to others and see what strategies they're pursuing. In fact, I think we need to have a proper hearing with Philip and really just check out that he doesn't think that people who are standing up for things like equal pay or standing up for women in the justice system are feminist zealots. As long as he can assure us of that, maybe he should have a role and he could learn something by being on the committee.
Caroline.
All right, well, I'm sure you're going to get on really well on this committee.